Hello, jewelry lover. My name is Bella Naiman, and I'm the founder of New York City Jewelry Week. Welcome to this virtual program, part of NYCJW 24. The theme for the seventh annual edition is Wander and Wander, and it reflects the multifaceted nature of jewelry as both art and personal expression. Wander captures the awe-inspiring craftsmanship behind each piece, the dazzling, delicate, or bold details that turn your head in admiration. Wander invites you to explore the wonderful and wild creative journeys behind the jewelry. It's not just about the finished piece, it's about the adventure it took to get there. Designers experiment, push boundaries, and play with ideas and materials. And this year, New York City Jewelry Week takes participants to see it all unfold. Every necklace, ring, and bracelet is a passport to a new world where innovation reigns and imagination knows no limit. So we hope that these programs will take you on that journey and are your passport as well. Sit back, enjoy, and while these are not live, we welcome your comments. So please don't hesitate to drop us a line, whether it's email or Instagram, or even get in touch with some of the incredible curators, artists, writers that have really worked very hard to bring you this program. So thanks very much. And we also hope to see you out in New York. Bye.
All good? Okay. All right, so thank you so much for everyone for joining us this afternoon. It's a real pleasure and an honour to be here. It's great to be a part of New York Jewelry Week, so thank you to everybody on the New York Jewelry Week team, Bella in particular, thank you for hosting us. And a huge thank you, I know Johnny's already said it, but thank you to Patricia and everybody at Pratt. Yeah, you've been amazing, an absolute legend, so thank you so much. So my name is Sally Collins. I am head of the Jewellery BA at Central St Martin's in London, so it's my pleasure to be here today. I'm going to be chairing this discussion that we're having this afternoon. I'd like to also just say thank you to everybody who we've just heard from in the talk previously, to Roxanne, to Jonathan, to Johnny, and to Patricia. So much to unpack and reflect on and think about within that talk. Definitely that idea of the eye mountain, that image is going to stay with me. And Johnny, I've written down some great words that I've learned from your talk, so I might test them out on you later. Thank you. We also just need to say thank you so much to the support of Royal College of Art, who have helped us be here today to run this symposium, and also to the Goldsmiths Fair, who have sponsored our exhibition, which is over in that direction, I believe. That way? Yeah, okay. So thank you for your support and enabling us to be here and make this happen. It's amazing, so thank you. Okay, so we're going to hear from 3 artists today who are going to talk about their work, and I'm going to just introduce their work and their practice briefly before we start some questions. So I'm going to start off with, oh, this is good. We've actually sat in the order that I've written it down, so amazing. So we're going to start off with Toch, who's to my left. So Adi is an artist working with metal, exploring the morphological qualities of vessels and objects that surround us, using a combination of historical and traditional techniques in combination with almost kind of alchemic, very playful and experimental uses of materials and processes. Her pieces focus on our physical experience of objects, whether that's sensorially, sonically, in a tactile sense, or that could be emotional as well. Adi exhibits her work all over the world in private and public exhibitions and collections. For example, the V&A, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, the Ulster Museum in Belfast, and also the Jewish Museum, which is here in New York City. Adi is also a lecturer at the Royal College of Art in London. So next, I would like to introduce you to Max Warren. Hello. Max is also a lecturer and a researcher at the Royal College of Art in London, and is a senior lecturer at Central St Martin's in London as well. Max is a silversmith and an object maker, using fine metalworking skills to explore the complexity of immaterial structures that surround us, so perhaps socially or digitally. A core element of his work is his precise use of patchworking in different metals, in different alloys, which are then heat-treated or patinated or reticulated to produce these really complex and detailed surfaces. tiled surfaces, which contrast to what you might consider more simple forms that these objects occupy. And last, but of course not least, I would like to introduce you to Katharina Dettar. So Katty's practice works across both metal and stone and really considers the origin of materials, their journeys, their stories, their impact and the implications that they have on the world around us. Katty creates both objects and jewellery and items that give us notions of jewellery as well. Like Addie and Max, Katharina exhibits her work all over the world, with pieces in collections such as Coda Museum in Apeldoorn, in Ida Oberstein, and in the International Collection of Contemporary Jewellery, which is in Legnica. Katharina also works in jewellery education, like we all do, as a lecturer at Hertfordshire University, as a senior lecturer at Central St Martin's, and also a visiting lecturer at Royal College of Art. So very busy. So yes, obviously through these short descriptions and brief introductions to these artists' work, it's possible to see already that there are parallels between what they're doing and their approaches and their practices. But what brings us and them here today to discuss the topic of memory and metal? Well, really it's a deep connection to materiality, where we see for each of them a practice that is rooted in a reverence and an enjoyment in the tradition and the historic kind of notion of both material and object, that's coupled with a really kind of questioning attitude that challenges, that it explores, that really kind of tries to push the boundaries of what these materials and these objects can be. It can be playful, it can be subversive, but it's always thoughtful and questioning. There's also a recognition for the history and for the memory of where these objects and these materials come from. Technically, geographically, historically, culturally, sensorily. So yes, a desire to push boundaries, to challenge our understanding of materials, of memory and metal. So, we're going to move on to do some discussions and questions with the artists. But first of all, just to briefly explain how it's going to work today. Oh, I didn't start my timer. Okay, there we go. So we have a series of rolling slides, which hopefully are rolling. I haven't looked. Yes, okay, behind us. So that includes work from all these three artists and myself as well. I have a couple of questions that I want to ask these guys. And it's going to be a very sort of informal conversation about their works and their practice. And then, of course, we will have the opportunity for questions at the end. But if for some reason it feels like the right moment and there's something that you really want to ask, then, of course, please just pop your hands up and go for it. Okay. I was like, oh, already? We haven't even started. Oh, my God. Okay, so we're gonna get started. All right, then. So I'm going to dive in straight away to talk about metal. And I'm going to ask Max, if that's okay. Can you talk about your relationship with metal and how you work with it, how you perceive it, why it's precious to you, what it means to you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that introduction, Sally. Yeah, metal, I do work with other materials, but like metal I feel is home for me. You know, I might go on holiday in other places, but it's kind of my accent. And everything I know about materiality starts with metal for me. And that relationship kind of began formally at college, I think, as for a lot of people. I didn't grow up in a family of artists or metalsmiths or jewelers. We certainly didn't have a collection of silver at home, so I didn't really know what a silversmith was. But in my undergraduate study, I went to art school and I did a course which explored lots of different materials. It was called Wood, Metal, Ceramics and Plastics, which was great. I've always been indecisive, and that course was like, do a bit of everything. And also it didn't tie you into a fine art practice or a product design or engineering. It was kind of, you can begin with materiality and project out from there. And it was a workshop with the process of raising, which for many of you students probably know what that is, but if you're not aware, it's the process of cold forging metal, sheet metal with hammers to create hollow forms. And it just like, it blew my mind, because having no understanding of how metal worked really beyond the kind of innate understanding that we have as people, it was that first step of taking this like seemingly hard, immovable substance and then moving it like clay. So if any of you have raised, it's like really you have this kind of soft squishiness that you can move metal as if it was clay. It just takes a lot longer. It takes a very long time and process of heat and quenching. And with that, it's like this idea that you can take this hard, flat surface and create these like rich volumes, these soft kind of bodily shapes. And also, like, I think that even though my practice isn't about raising anymore, I rarely use it in my own work, but it's the foundation for everything, for understanding metal, because it has this kind of bodily connection. I love the kind of previous discussions, but this was like that. This is the opposite of that kind of intellectualization and immaterial thinking. This was when you hit a piece of metal, you know when it's a little bit too hard and it's going to crack, so you've got to heat it and quench it. You can feel it, the feedback into your body, the sound of it, how it feels in your hands. And I think that kind of innate understanding that stays with you feeds everything, even though now I'm more into kind of like I fabricate work. I'm kind of scoring and folding. I'm playing more with surface, but that still underpins everything. And like more latterly, I think the innate properties of particular metals fascinate me. So I'm very precise about the particular alloys of metals that I use, and that. So, for example, in the exhibition, there's a series of reticulated works. So that is they're silver works. Is in the left-hand corner of the gallery. There's three white pieces, white on white on white over there. That's not what it's called, just the White Album. But anyway, they are all like wrinkled surface of silver, very fractal, complex surfaces, and that is achieved through a heating process, but it only happens with this very particular alloy. I mean, it happens in other alloys, but this very dramatic effect happens with a very particular alloy. So. And the other works, the colours emerge through different alloys. So I'm interested not in just in metal, but in what it can do and the specificity of it. So, and it's kind of feels like it's only just begun, exploring this small spectrum of metals. Yeah.
I absolutely love that analogy of like metal is home, and you might go on holiday somewhere else, but you'll always stay true to it.
Yeah, there's bits of plastic in the show and some wood that you might not recognise, but it's all kind of a round metal.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. Addy, could you talk a little bit about your relationship with metal? Perhaps, touch on how you play with tradition and kind of more explorative, experimental approaches as well, like the dialogue between the two?
Yeah, so I started quite young with metal, actually. I was 14. And being a...
Do you want to go a bit closer, maybe?
Yeah, sorry. So, started at the age of 14. I've been an apprentice to a jeweler, and I really was captivated by the alchemy of metal, the transformative nature, how it shifts from solid to liquid. Also the sound. Max was touching on it, the fact that you can work with it and actually feel feedback from it, and it's a very communicative material, so it's often perceived as very hard, solid, rigid material, but there is softness to it that it's kind of a secret that us makers who work with metal know, that it's very soft. Some metals are even submissive, I would say. So that was really interesting for me. And then the fact that it has so many other faces as well, metal. So there is this perception of it, and then the softness, and then recently discovered an alloy which was used across cultures historically, and it's white bronze, or called sometimes specular metal. And it's an alloy of copper and tin, which are by themselves soft materials. But in this particular combination, it creates an alloy that is, it's quite volatile. You can't form it through hammering. It breaks. There is fragility to it.
Shall we show this round?
Yeah,
Yes.
so I can show some samples.
This one or both of them?
We can start with that.
Yeah, so we have a couple of samples to pass round. Just ask if you can just leave them in the boxes, if that's okay. Yep.
For now, and
Yeah.
then later you can come over and...
Yeah. Okay. So carry on. I'll move these.
So one of the... So one of those it's a shard of a mirror. So this alloy was used specifically for mirrors, and I've been quite obsessed with mirrors for the past 2 years. So my practice started very much tied with vessels and hollow forms, and then it's not a shift, it's a continuation. So mirrors, I also see them as containers, because they reflect, they contain potential, and they reflect changing time. So they are both, for me, they represent emptiness and fullness at the same time. Like there's this potential in them. So this alloy it behaves like the way we know mirrors today, which is the material, the common material is glass, but it's actually metal, and I find it really interesting that it shows this unexpected nature.
How did you discover this material, the speculum? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, speculum,
Yeah.
which
Did you
comes
just...
from speculum, that's what it's actually mirrors, so
Okay.
that in Latin. So how did I discover it? So I was researching.
So is that the speculum on the floor? No.
That's okay. Relax. We will actually have a demo a little bit later of
Little treat, yeah.
breaking one. So exploring it, I noticed that in collections, I also often go to handling sessions in museums. You were referring to history, so I find it really inspiring and interesting, and just this strive for perfection in historic objects, and learn about materials and about past time. I think it's super interesting. Handling sessions, it's this haptic experience that you can't replace with just researching in other ways, just touching and holding, and especially when it comes to assessing through touch with the same hands that also make so know how to make objects, similar objects. And I think that it's quite powerful that this knowledge is being transferred from generation to generation as well. So that's so I found a collection of 22 bronze mirrors in the V&A, not on display. The best objects are usually
hidden away somewhere.
Hidden away.
Yeah.
But the reason is also because they're really crumbling. They're made from an alloy of tin and copper. They're called white bronze. It's called white bronze. So in some cultures it's called white bronze, in other speculum, and also later dates. But it's actually a very similar composition, which is about a third of tin. And these particular mirrors have such a thick layer of patina that it became a material
In itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like the material of time, accumulation of calcite. There is also some oxides, but also calcite, iron, and other minerals. And I found them really poetic. So I made the first mirrors in response from white bronze. And then I think the discovery about the breaking was that I made something and I wanted to recycle the metal and just try to cut it, and it was super hard. And I just went with a hammer and hit it, and it went everywhere. It's just like, it was not something that I expected.
Well, there's an example of a broken one in the exhibition that we have, but that you didn't
that's
want
the
to break
first.
that one, right?
No,
that one was,
because there is something quite aggressive in specular metal or white bronze. It's just like, if it's not annealed very slowly, it could just explode. And if it doesn't, just straight after it's made, it's very sturdy, and it's like, it's not, unless you hit it with a hammer or throw it, it won't break. But there is tension in it, so I started finishing the piece, and it just exploded in 6 parts, but just perfect, like a jigsaw. So what I found really interesting also is all the associated myth and superstition around broken mirrors. I don't know how many years of bad luck I have now. I stopped counting, but it's way, way beyond 7. And that's also because historically mirrors were either made to connect with God or to reflect. I mean, in Roman times it was believed that it reflects your soul. So
hence you wouldn't want to have that reflection broken.
Exactly. So I really like this drama around mirrors, and then also how it connects to contemporary culture and selfies. And I mean, I'm interested in the viewer's response as well, and how they shift from looking at their own reflection to looking at the surface of the material.
Must be quite interesting to perceive people looking at your work in exhibitions.
Absolutely. And then I play with the alloying as well. So rather than, there was this mirror, it has to be throughout history. It's like the perfection, the recipe, for the alloying, the polishing, keeping them flat. That was the sort of the ambition. And with my mirrors, I'm experimenting with the alloying a bit. I use all recycled materials. And I told you about this story that I bought copper-plated iron wire, so electric wire, bunch of electric wire, and there was something that was actually steel, and it just messed up the alloy. But you can see the mirror in the exhibition. You can pick up these details.
In the little lines.
Exactly, and it just adds another layer. And again, like, I like that shift between looking at finding reflections to actually the surface details. It's all polished by hand, so made in similar ancient techniques and polished by hand. So there is a contrast. Polishing is a very, very quick process and quite intense, and then the slowness of polishing by hand, you feel like you reveal clarity slowly from the metal. There is something like you expose, and there is this mystical thing about mirrors, because it's almost like an opening to another dimension
realm.
or another realm.
Thank you.
So that's.
Katty, what about? Turn the mic on. I mean, obviously your work isn't just in metal; it's in stone. Like, what's your relationship with these materials?
So I guess I don't have a home, but I have 2 holiday homes. And I go to one, or
a caravan and
a narrow boat and a caravan, and I go from one to the other, depending on the pieces or the topic, or whenever the material talks to me, from where it originates from or how it looks like. But I mean, why would I have to choose if both of them originated when earth originated as well? You find them as well mixed up. You find gold in quartz, or you have iron ore that has hematite in it. So somehow, I would say, I don't know if chemically or we reduce it to materials and to minerals, they come together very often. And it's just through processes and technology that we separate them. and we take whatever we need from it, I guess. And going to this, they say that lots of the metal that is on Earth originated with a supernova explosion, and the metal on it then became part of this Earth. And then through eruptions or volcanic eruptions or water flowing, rivers, stuff comes up to the upper layers of the planet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I work with both. I guess I trained as a jeweler 3 years in Barcelona when I was quite young as well. And then from there I went to Germany because I'm half German and education there is for free. And I learned stone carving. So I guess I have both things, and I profit from it.
Yeah.
I use it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit jealous of the fact that both yourself and Eddie got to learn and discover about metal and jewellery at an earlier age, because I, like Max, did it when I was at uni. Yeah. And I loved what you said about that kind of secret that we share, like that moment when you discover the secret of how to work with metal and make it kind of...
I also work with fire. I mean,
yes, yeah, exactly.
I think we're both, like we're all secretly...
Pyromaniacs.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Talking of fire, for example, the origin of diamonds, right? Diamonds are carbon. So this happens when carbon atoms are deep, like 200 kilometers down in the earth. And at some point, with pressure and 3 billion years, a bit of time.
Casual.
Yeah, not 65 billion like Earth, but a bit of time. Pressure and heat from volcanic explosions that erupts. So the diamonds come up with magma, and when the magma hardens, it's called kimberlite or kimberlite, something like this. And then, so you have the kimberlite with the diamonds in there, and that brings it a bit closer to us. So not 200 kilometers down into the earth, but a bit further up. And then we dig it up, we destroy the planet, and we find, the Kimberley area in South Africa, where lots of the diamonds are from, but also where the Kimberley process originated. And the Kimberley process is what, I guess, it's a system we have created to make sure that diamonds come from a conflict-free area. However, I think there are ways we can improve that, because conflict-free just means that maybe governments, even though if they're corrupt or not, or whoever controls politically the area profits from that. Rather, when it's conflict diamonds, it would be like the rebel group handing them. But it still doesn't help the smuggling or not paying the taxes or moving small, very important, very expensive goods from one place to the next. I'm derailing.
You've got some things that we might pass around as well. Yeah, shall I?
So I've got some quartz from Madagascar. And quartz is quite common. Yeah, it's quite a common stone. But Madagascar quartz is known for being, thank you, Adi, for being crystal clear. So this is rock crystal. Quartz is the family, but rock crystal is one kind of family of crystals within quartz, and it's crystal clear. And I was really glad to hear that Patricia spoke of extractivism, because even though it sounds like activism, it's probably the opposite. And yes, it's a new, it was born in the 80s and the 90s in Latin America. I think it was some Argentinians who baptized it as extractivismo. But what it really brings is, it brings the name to what we have been doing for centuries and centuries. Yeah, go to colonialism or go even further down the line, which could be when, for example, there was some rock crystal in Madagascar that was taken out and transported all the way up to the Horn of Africa and sold in the Islamic Fatimid period, so early medieval period in 900, like 1,100 years ago. So that has been happening always, but there are new systems. Like with extractivism, I would say that it's still someone taking the resources, but there are other ways of saying, like, okay, if we will build roads and schools and in exchange of extracting this material, but also maybe you don't get, the World Bank might not accept your loan if you don't agree that this company from this other country gets a license to dig in here. No? So I think it's new ways, new systems to get those materials.
I think hearing you talk about like that, the origin and the story and the narrative of materials is so important to your work, isn't it? It's like really fundamental to how you create and you work within your practice, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I try.
Absolutely. And that goes across both metal and stone, would you say?
Yeah, it goes both metal and stone, maybe lately more stone than metal, but it kind of comes and goes. Yeah.
And you show both in the exhibition?
Yes, Adi is right. I'm showing both in the exhibition.
2 metal pieces and 1 stone piece.
Yeah, 2 metal pieces. And the stone piece you will see there, but it comes with a flip book that if you come afterwards, you can come and have a look at it, because it shows you the process of how you carve the stone from the beginning to the end product. So it started as one thing of 7 kilos, and then through cutting and grinding and carving, you end up with that pile of things and the bowl on top. And it looks a bit like it could be done 500 years ago.
And is that the piece that's called 78.8%?
Yes.
And is there 78.8% waste? I've got that the right way around.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was going to say visually, for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't know
it's-
if it's here. Is there an image? I don't know.
Perhaps I could ask Max and then Adi about the origin of materials and how you play with this within your work. I mean, we've mentioned a little bit about alloys, but obviously, I say obviously, but you've just done the projects where you've made the cutlery from those reclaimed materials as well. I don't know if there was something you wanted to...
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think teaching and being in academia has played a big role in this, because you have to kind of step out of yourself and have these discussions on a larger scale. And so obviously sustainability and going beyond sustainability with circular design principles and regenerative design principles are higher and higher on the agenda every year that we go into our discussions. And a recent project that I've done, a research project, which is part of Maison Zero at Central St. Martin's, which is exploring luxury industries, but through a circular design lens. So how can that particularly harshly polluting and kind of from the external side, it seems quite uncaring industry, how can we find ways to engage with the luxury industries but do better? And so this project was specifically about tableware, and I was working with ceramicists, glass artists, textile artists to create this kind of luxury dining landscape, but rethinking the material processes and supply chains. So I made some prototype cutlery using it was silver and wood, but the silver was reclaimed from medical X-rays. So working with this company in the UK called Betts Metals, it's a really amazing kind of new system that they're developing, because all of the hospitals, I'm sure it's the same here, but in the UK, every hospital has a warehouse of X-rays because of data, and they can't dispose of them. So they were either kind of going to very specific landfill, or more often they were just hanging on to them, but they have this very small silver content in all of them. And so Betts have developed this process to reclaim the silver. So also the objects are modular, so they're designed to be fixed, replaced, and recycled easily at the end. But I mean, silver's really difficult. Metal is really difficult, and I think it's, silver, gold, because of its preciousness monetarily, we've always recycled it, but not because we're good people, but because
just because that's how it goes.
You would, right? You don't want to lose that money. So I think we're constantly trying to do better. I mean, personally, I work with unique alloys, and often I make my own alloys from scrap. I try never to use kind of virgin mined material, and pretty much never do that. So it's generally reclaimed. But I think, the students are really kind of leading the way with this, I think, and we're constantly doing projects. So recently we did this project about mining London with our students at Central St Martin's, and they were looking at non-extractive processes of sourcing materials, and we had some amazing things. People making work from like London bricks from building sites.
And from old clothes labels.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Conkers and
working with these materials.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I get my inspiration, to be honest, and like keeping a check of me trying to strive to do better with my materiality.
Yeah, and it's not like you wouldn't sort of give a damn anyway, but definitely being around the students, it makes you more accountable, because you think like, oh gosh, you know, I need to make sure that I'm like at least trying to lead the way a little bit. Yeah. Okay, amazing. And what about yourself, Addy? What about your relationship with the origin of materials?
So,
Let me just
I
sketch
think
you.
it's so accessible and easy now to just order a sheet of metal, which is very tempting. But I started looking into more origin of metal and working with raw materials and alloying my own alloys during the pandemic. So there was, first of all, an issue with supply of the specific alloy Britannia silver that I was working
Sorry, a
with.
big block of colour just in the background.
It's lighting the room. I love it. We're all quite melancholic, so I like the brightness here. So I started making my own alloy of silver just from
So did you say
necessity.
that was in pandemic?
During the pandemic.
Right. Yeah.
And also experimenting with lower melting point metals, low temperature, because I was making things from home. And then discovering all these different alloys. So I think it made me connect better with the material. In 2021, I had a project with the V&A Museum in London, responding to a historic gold ewer, which is a jug that was it was returned to Turkey, so responding to the restitution of it. And it was quite groundbreaking because, first of all, the V&A Museum was the first one to employ a provenance expert, and we're talking about provenance of materials, but there is also the provenance, the cultural provenance, and history of objects or archaeology. It's all tied in.
Is that Jacques?
So that's Jack Schumacher.
Yeah.
Was and then also the way that the approach. So it's part of the V&A collection. It's called the Gilbert collection. So it's a private collection within the V&A, and that's why it was also relatively easier. But it was quite amazing how it went. Like the realization, once they realized there are no records of the excavation of the expert from Turkey. So it was an Anatolian ewer, so over 5,000 years old. And there are objects similar to it in the Museum of Anatolian Civilization. But once they discovered there are no records, and every agent who ever handled this piece was a bit dodgy, and one of them actually sat in jail and wrote a book about everything he's done. So it was quite clear. It was quite clear that this is stolen. And then the commission was the idea was to trigger conversation and thinking around the themes of restitution and provenance. I decided to make a funnel because this jug had the broken spout, and spout gives direction, and I thought that the fact it found itself in London in the wrong place, in the wrong direction, so to kind of give direction, but also the idea of the form which is accepting and going through and things are kind of coming back to where they should be. And I recreated the same alloy of the ancient ewer. So
And what alloy was that?
it was so gold with, so it's like equivalent of 21.7 carat, and which is not something that we use in modern gold, but it's typical of the time and place. It was probably found in a river, so rather than in an ore, like a sediment in a river, before the knowledge of separating metals, so just from the raw gold. So I guess that's also put me on the path of making my own metal. And
Have you ever explored making alloys in your work, Katty? I'm asking this and I actually don't know the answer to the
Alloys?
question. Yeah.
Well, I learned it, like
Yeah.
the basics, but no, I haven't.
Yeah. No, I was just curious.
I get recycled copper sheets for these pieces.
Aha. Yeah.
There we go.
And that's patinated as well.
That's patinated, yes. And then it's drilled, so it's 2D, they're absolutely flat. And the drilling and the patination gives you a little bit that 3D effect, like from a painting. Yeah. And that's copper and it's silver plated where the beads are, and then patinated. Yeah.
Before I actually saw that piece in the flesh, I was really trying to work out what was happening.
It's
I was thinking, is there
optical
something
illusion,
draped over the top, particularly the other image where there's a pearl like hanging across the top?
Oh,
If-
over.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is in the exhibition.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can go and see.
Yeah, perfect. Amazing.
Can we ask where the...
Yes, that's a really good question. We just need to keep an eye. Aha, I see. So
Yeah,
we
there,
have
yeah.
two there and then the shard. Amazing. Perfect. We don't need them just yet, but appreciate that. Thank you. So I want to ask you guys about memory now, if that's okay. So considering memory, how would you say, I'll go with a D first. How would you say your work explores how we experience an object? Thank you. How we interact with it, what those layers of meaning are, and maybe as makers, what we put into it.
So the layers, I guess, start from the materials, where they come from, and then through to what we discussed, like provenance of cultural provenance, and then as makers, the meaning that we put into it. But also we don't have any, like we have some control. We can curate the atmosphere to experience an object, but a viewer would experience it with their own also memory and life experience.
And do you find that you sort of, you're quite happy to let that happen with people that see and experience your work, or just kind
once I mean, my part is quite short actually with the object, so I make something for a few months. Once it's done and it's out there,
wave goodbye and it.
Goodbye, and then, you know, if someone, I'm very grateful that people agree to live with things that I make, actually, and then if they spend a lifetime, they will project their own meaning and memories around it, and pass it on to the next generation, especially with precious metals. So there is life to objects beyond us, and there is life to metal. So metal also has a life cycle, which is something that we can really identify with. It changes over time.
Yeah, I wonder, could I ask you about your urns in relation to this?
So, what I show here, actually, I was thinking about it. It's Jewelry Week, and I'm showing objects that relate to the body in a different way. So an urn holds our memory. The urns in the show were buried, part of a research project where I bury my work for different lengths of time in different locations. So the place has a meaning, and also the time, and time is experienced in days, in months, in seasons. So it's really about sensing sensing time, exploring rituals that surround burial. And
We really need those images to roll around
yeah,
now,
they
don't
will
we?
come soon. There are like two images, one covered in earth.
Yeah,
and
it's an
one-
incredible image. The urn just come out of the ground covered in mud.
Yeah, so
God, I get a headache.
yeah, it's coming
Yay.
soon.
Yay.
Here it is.
Okay,
And
there we
then
go,
the
that
result,
helps.
The result is the one before, or you just
Thank
have
you.
to come and see two of them in the show. But I was thinking about, so urns connect to their holder, our memory, mirrors that hold the reflection. So there is a different connection to the body, and there is a bowl that usually nourishes our body,
Or is held in the hands.
or held in the hands, yeah. One of the first vessels, actually.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, that's and then we just touched on patina, which is a chemical reaction, and it naturally develops over time. We don't not necessarily appreciate aging in ourselves, but actually
Trying to.
yeah, trying to, but the way the surfaces age, whether it's leather or wood or metal, and it's something that also Max exploring his work, and Kathy, because that piece that we saw before is actually layers of metal, plated, oxidized, stripped. So
The piece with the pearls, the drilled one.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
the-
there are layers.
The one that looks like pearls. It's a close-up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd love to know. How does memory play a part in your practices, both Max and Katty?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, like to talk in general terms beyond a particular piece, for me, material and meaning, memory comes into it in a big way, but material and meaning, materiality, I see as like creating a vocabulary of meaning. So material qualities, so like form, texture, surface, the subtleties of what different metals we're talking about today.
Go there. No, go here so people will see. That's okay. But try to break it again. It might be even smaller parts.
Wow.
You're so strong, Kelly. It's amazing. Impressive.
Okay, if anyone else wants to try later, you're welcome.
Yeah, at the end of the session, we'll leave them here.
Yeah, we'll leave it
Thank
here.
you so
all the
much.
pieces, and you're welcome to come.
I would have to struggle a bit more to do
Does it? It feels like a cookie a little bit, right? Yeah.
The colour and the patination on the surface of that is so beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so amazing. Does anybody have any questions for our three fantastic artists? Or any comments or anything that they'd like to share? Alex, yes, Roxanne.
Hi, yes, I have a question for Katharina. You had an image, and I think it was a leading image of the symposium, with a gold ring, 2.1 grams. Could you talk a little bit about that body of work?
Yeah, I can do that. So you can find gold, like the Anatolians that found it in the riverbed in nuggets to do the iwa that Adi said was returned to them, or how you would find it in the big Western movies, like sifting, going through the riverbed and you find nuggets. Or you could find gold, which is the more common way, in very thin dust-like particles of gold within quartzite, which is a kind of stone at the very top, so it's more pinkish, but it has a bit of iron there as well. So we'll have the gold particles in the iron, and the iron is in the quartzite. And for 2.1 grams of gold, which would be a very thin wedding band, you need around 140 kilos of quartzite. But to get to the quartzite, so if you ever find quartzite with a high amount of iron in it, mixed with shale, or kind of, what's the stuff that the roofs are made, and it's black? Slate. Yeah, it's a kind of like shale slate mix. By the land, because you have high possibilities to having gold in there, you need 10 times more to dig that out to get to the quartzite. So at the end, you might need it always depends a bit on location, because depending where there are more rich sediments or less rich places, but it's around 1,540 kilos for a 2.1 gram ring. And the piece is I don't know, it arrives to my belly button, and I could be under it. So it's like the table probably, a bit higher, and you have the ring at the top. So it's a way of visualizing data, because you can always say, okay, it's 1.5 tons.
It doesn't mean anything though, does it, really?
But then if you carry it, and you carry it around, and you build it up, you realize it's a lot. And it doesn't mean that the shale is going to be, discarded, because they might use it for construction or for building other things. So stone is always used, even if you were to have a big stone that you cut into pieces and make a bowl, the rest would probably be used to make another piece, and the very little bits are then beads. So you always utilize everything, really. But it's impressive to think.
Yeah. And where does this piece live?
In a museum, luckily, because I built it up 7 times, and I said I'm not doing it anymore. And at some point, you drive vans around, 2 trips, because it's only 750 kilo per trip. God. And you keep it in sacks of not more than 25 kilo, because I cannot lift more than that. So you
That's quite a lot still, though.
Yeah, no, lots. It was about 40 or something like this.
It's really strong, the fact that you really feel the weight as well.
You see
of this action of.
Yeah. And it's in the Arnhem Museum in the Netherlands.
Okay. But the museum's a perfect place for something like this, though, isn't it?
Yes.
Because you do need that visualization to understand it, otherwise it just feels like hypothetical.
Yeah. I thought maybe in front of a trade show might be nice. In front of a... Yeah.
So I think we might need to wrap up now. Is that all right? Or was there one more question? No? Oh, yeah. So I would really love to invite Kelly Riggs. I was going to say to the stage, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Who was really kindly going to just kind of, I don't know.
I think it would be best for the recording. Okay, no, that's fine. Hi, thanks for inviting me. My name is Kelly. I was sort of asked to do it in real time, rapid fire response to everything that was discussed, which feels really scary because I think that was the most efficient transference of information I've ever received, especially the first half. It was so dense, and so I've taken I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. I really don't. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Kelly Riggs. I'm a curator with a background in jewelry, and I'm also a fine jeweler. So I feel like this is a really interesting place for me to be today because I have this material knowledge that we're discussing right now, but I also really like to organize things and to make sense of things that people make and sort of get to the bottom of why people do it at all. I think we're living in this time. Well, we've always lived in a time where we're so object centered and we collect things to sort of tell us who we are and make sense of the world. But I'm currently very interested in why people get into the studio and futz with stuff, and especially when it's not a market-driven field that we've selected necessarily. What is the point? And sometimes it's a little nihilistic, and sometimes it's a little sad. But yeah, I guess. Well, I don't have to read any of this. I guess this thing that happened to me when I was listening, and maybe it's a cliche, but this sort of quest for meaning, and the first half of the day was really it was so philosophical, and all of these very dense topics were thrown at us. And as I assume someone said that most of us are probably makers in here, nothing, all of those things have everything to do with us, whether we know them or not. It's very analogous to taken for granted technologies, or just the world that we live in, and all of those things touch us. And then we had this antidote to all that stuff. You guys just like metal, and you like melting stuff, not just anything, right? But there's this metaphysical, time-honored obsession that metalsmiths and jewelers have. And so I feel in a world that is controversy. Hold on, I'm going to digress for 1 second. Stick with me. I was at a talk the other night with Wendy Mayurama, who's an American woodworker, totally fabulous. And there's a lot of talk in the design world right now about this this comeback from technology and going back to a handmade physical thing. And there was a point in the talk where she was reading a review that someone wrote in. She had a table in the back of a magazine, and this person who just self-described as an amateur woodworker, it was obviously a man, decided to let her know that this table was awful, and it was so controversial for this reason and for that reason. And it got me thinking lately, what's a controversial object anymore? Can objects even anger people in a way that man was very angry? And I feel part of my takeaway from today is all the rules have been broken, right? And a controversial object is so subtle now because the material is a controversial world. And so the input is sort of inherently flawed or an error. And I was thinking about Roxanne's talk. I was thinking about these biases of technology and this thing that Patricia was saying about this input-output cycle of trying to understand more about AI, but then also feeding into sort of the inherent problems of AI, this unsustainable, invisible thing that we're all forced to deal with. Wow, did I just lose the plot? I might have just lost the plot. Right. Thank you. This idea that our task as makers, whether we like it or not, is really about remedy. And thinking about the colonization of material extraction or whatever. We're just trying to edit and course correct through making as reconciliation or as coping with this world that's been set up for us in a really kind of messed up way. And so that's sort of how I connected part one to part two. I don't know. I could go through everybody and pick a thought, or I could. How much time am I supposed to be up here? I have no idea what's going on.
We probably need to.
Okay, well then that's fine.
Any other thoughts, Kelly?
Any other thoughts?
First of all, amazing that you came and do this.
I didn't know I could do it. I literally had no idea what was going to happen when I came up here. I don't know, sort of a darker thought was like, what happens when we decide that things have no meaning also? I think Jonathan at the beginning was talking about like, what was the word that he used? There was so many words. I wrote a lot of them down, like this asemic, right? Like what happens when the meaning for doing something isn't to produce meaning? And I'm like, whoa, that's crazy, because I mean that's like what we do when we go into the studio. No one's in there being like, oh, I'm gonna like create meaning today. I mean, it's such an arbitrary or relative term. I don't know what point I wanted to make at the end with that, but that sort of stuck with me too, about like this pursuit of meaning, or to make sense of the world like through object making. And I think that's cool. So yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Thanks, Kelly.
You.
Thanks, everyone. Oh my God.
I just popped my mic on because I just wanted to remind everyone to please come and see our show this evening that opens at 6:30. And we're really excited to be here, and we would love if you could come and say hello and see our amazing, I'm going to say it, our amazing work.
And Sally, thank you. I was going to say the same thing. So there you go.
Oh, okay, amazing, thank you.
Perfect. So I just want to thank everyone for coming to this amazing symposium, to thank all our presenters, the conversations, the presentations. So much to think about, right? And thank you, Kelly, for kind of giving us even more to think about. But I just want to say that we are going to take a break. We need to change over for our next program. I invite you back at 5 o'clock, or close to, probably go a little over. So 5 o'clock, we'll start with our reflections on a Tai Chen, and then I invite you all to the gallery at 6:30 for our opening reception, and to see all the incredible work that's been talked about here in our symposium. So thank you again. And we'll see, if you're staying for Tai Chen, please stay. And if you're not staying, then you can also go to the gallery, whatever works. And definitely check out Atai's work. Thank you all.